What's good, YouTube? It's Justice I Used to Be Paying. Today I'm back with another video. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about why album sales in rap do matter. But before I get into that, make sure you leave a like, comment, subscribe, do all those things. It helps me out a ton. And also, by the way, for people who are new here and may not have known, I just got a new microphone. Even the people who are, return viewers might not have noticed. I got a new microphone. It's very expensive, but I'm still working out the kinks. I don't really know all the perfect settings, so if it doesn't sound 100% perfect in this video, forgive me. But yeah, this thing is pretty expensive. So all the dudes at the top, academics, Joe Budden, I'm tugging on your cape. Over the last couple of years, there's been a lot of concern surrounding album sales in rap. And this is because there seems to be a trend of a dip in album sales. Pretty much everybody outside of like the top 10 rappers in the game in terms of popularity have experienced this dip and this overall just downturn in terms of the numbers that we're seeing for these first and second week sales of these albums. And this is a very noticeable trend because of how prominent the conversation of album sales are, specifically first week sales, in the average rap conversation nowadays. Whenever people are arguing about which rapper is better than the other rapper, album sales is typically the center of this discussion, and if it's not the center of the discussion, then it's a street that people end up turning down, at least at some point in the conversation, which raises another question, and that question is, do album sales actually even matter? When you look at the rise of prevalence that album sales have had in the average rap conversation, you really have to look at two specific things, the first being the internet and the other being DJ academics. Album sales have always been monitored and tracked. That's always been a thing, but it used to be much more of an industry concern. Fans didn't really concern themselves with it or know that much about it outside of maybe like big announcements if something went really, really crazy. But otherwise, fans just didn't know because the internet in its current iteration didn't exist back then. So it wasn't widely known, easily accessible information. Nobody really cared. And if people really did care about album sales, if they were really interested to find out, it was a lot harder to find out than it was or than it is today. So even if they did care, it just wasn't something that was easily available. So it was much more an industry concern. But with the boom of the internet in the early 2000s to mid 2000s, these numbers became widely known information, and we got classic moments in hip-hop like when Kanye and 50 Cent decided to drop on the exact same day in 2007 and compete to see who would outsell the other. And since then, we've gotten a whole bunch of crazy moments in hip-hop surrounding specifically album sales and first week sales, really, which is what most people tend to emphasize. But on the internet as well, the internet rap culture started to change when it came to album sales with the arrival of DJ Academics and the way that he covers and monitors first week album sales and how he discusses them as a centerpiece of his streams or whatever he's talking about at that moment. That has changed how the internet has looked at first week sales and looked at album sales. And for better or for worse, you have to acknowledge the fact that DJ Academics has had a massive influence on the internet rap culture today. And I know that makes people upset, but it's true. The way we talk about album sales online wasn't talked about the way it is now before academics, which a lot of people will say is a negative thing. But whenever a major project is about to be dropped, there's honestly just as much anticipation to see what the numbers will be for that project as there is to actually hear the music and see how high of a quality that project actually ends up being. Some people are even more, honestly, I think people tend to more talk about the numbers than they do the quality once a project is out. It's a lot easier to talk about, it's selling 200K and that being great, or it's selling 15K and that being bad, than it is to actually form your own music opinion and actually have something worthwhile to say other than just it's bad or it's good. So I think that's probably part of the reason as to why people tend to talk a lot about the sales in comparison to the quality, because it's a lot easier to do that, and one's concrete and the other is supposed to be your own ideas that you picked up from actually listening and paying attention to the music, which we know rap fans don't listen to their own music sometimes. People are just in general more excited to talk about somebody's album going triple plastic or double aluminum. And honestly, I'm not going to lie, it is kind of fun. It is fun to, make fun of Coi Leray for selling 10K. I'm not going to sit up here and act like I haven't done it before, all right? I get it. But at the end of the day, that's kind of a toxic culture. And it's led to a lot of artists putting even more pressure on themselves when it comes to album sales, because when we actually talk about album sales, what we mean, at least nowadays, is really just first week and second week sales. nobody really cares past that point. Once you get past the first and second week sales of an album, nobody cares really all the way up until that album goes platinum. And then the album goes platinum and people go, oh yeah, that's really cool. Like, shout out to so-and-so, they deserved it. That's pretty much the end of the conversation. Nobody cares outside the first and second weeks unless you're like, Drake and you're 3 months down the line and still selling close to 100K, then people might give you some flowers. But otherwise, really people are just focused on this first and second week. And this has led to a lot of pressure being put on themselves by the rappers, by the artists, because of course they're worried about how much their album's going to sell because that directly correlates to how much money they're going to make. But now they also have to worry about people in their comment section leaving comments, telling them how they flopped, telling them how they went triple cardboard. Look at somebody like DJ Mustard. Just now, he dropped a project and it sold like 18K first week. And people have just been relentlessly roasting him in his comment section. And it's kind of led him to crash out on social media. He's gone crazy, gone ballistic, talked about how, first week album sales are a form of white supremacy, which is a pretty interesting point. If he could follow that up, that might be something worth making a video on his own YouTube for DJ Mustard, I guess. But yeah, you see a lot more people crashing out online nowadays, these artists, because their sales are low and people are reacting to it and roasting them in the comment section. One of my favorite excuses personally when somebody's album doesn't sell well is when they come out and say, it wasn't an album, it was a mixtape. That's a classic to me. That is one of my favorites. The toxic culture that's been created surrounding first week album sales is personified by Stan Twitter. Now, maybe you're a normal person who's not on the internet too much and, you're not chronically online, so you don't really know what Stan culture is. You don't know that much about it, but I'll break it down real quick. Stan culture is where all these fanboys and fangirls go on Twitter, and they basically defend their favorite artists with their life. That's all they talk about. That's all they post about. They go at other people who go at their artists. They go crazy. Some people will even diss like babies of artists that don't like their favorite artists because they're so infatuated with their own artist. It's kind of like Stan, like the music video Eminem, that's where it comes from. So that's just a quick breakdown of it. They're really crazy. I saw Nicki Minaj fans and Cardi B fans literally going baby for baby on like Twitter. They were comparing the children like, that's why. Like it was crazy. But Nicki fans in particular are like one of the main culprits of this toxic culture that surrounds first week album sales, because Nicki Minaj is easily one of the biggest rappers ever. Regardless of gender, right? People like to box her, and regardless of gender, she's one of the biggest ever. And obviously, when you compare it to the other women, it's not even really close, especially nowadays. And so, a lot of the times, Nicki stans, I should say, will see another female artist that she's not really getting along with drop an album, and they cannot wait until those first week album sales so they can roast that artist and talk about how this is what happens when you diss Nicki and you flopped. Oh my God. Like, that's the type of stuff that Nicki stans like to do. They're literally just refreshing chart data until they can finally get the first week album sales. Like, look at what happened with Meg Thee Stallion. She sold like 60K. They were flaming Meg Thee Stallion. Lotto sold like 30K. They were flaming Lotto. That's kind of their thing. And then on the other side of things, we also have Drake fans who are notorious in doing the first week album sales flexing thing. They flex on everybody because Drake has the biggest first week album sales in pretty much all of music outside of like Taylor Swift at the moment. And that's been a thing of contention that's always brought up on Twitter, especially during the Kendrick beef. That was a thing that Drake fans brought up all the time. It's something they bring up whenever anyone criticizes Drake and what he's doing in his music. So it's a thing. It's a thing on Twitter that happens all the time. First week album sales flexing is the staple of Stan Twitter. But because of this toxic culture that's been created, and it's not just Stan Twitter, it's pretty much all of social media at this point. Because of this toxic culture that's been created with first week album sales and the pretty much hyper focus on it, people have started to counteract that and say, first week sales don't matter. Sales don't matter. Sales don't mean anything. And as much as I understand the sentiment to kind of counterbalance as how people have just glazed first week album sales over the last couple of 5 years now or whatever, I still say that album sales do matter. They just need a little bit more context than Drake sold 600K. He's better than your favorite rapper. Album sales absolutely do matter. They just exist in a different realm than quality does. And that's my main problem with the album sales conversation, because I love the album sales conversation. Now, we can talk about album sales till the end of time. I think it's very interesting and it tells you a lot. There's a lot to be taken away from it, just not that much specifically when it comes to the quality of the project. And that's the main issue here, because numbers are one of the only objective ways that you can actually measure artists, because it's art at the end of the day. Pretty much everything is subjective, and numbers are one of the only objective things that we can really talk about. And I can be right and you can be wrong. That's one of the only things for sure. Of course, if I say Tupac's better than Lil Pump, most people will say I'm right, and if somebody disagrees, they'll say they're wrong. But technically, nobody's technically right, if you understand what I'm saying. But when I say Drake is bigger than, I don't know, Drake's bigger than Lil Baby, that's objectively true. Like, you can't deny that. So that's what makes it so interesting and makes it more relatable to like a sport like basketball than an art like painting or something like that. But numbers will tell you a lot. Specifically, album sales pretty much are one of the best measurements for how big somebody's fan base is. Now, it's not the best measurement, because I think the best measurement is ticket sales. Ticket sales are the best measurement to see how big somebody's fan base is, but album sales are right behind that. First week album sales are right behind that, and they also tell you how big an artist is at that moment, how hot an artist is at that moment, and how big of an impact that artist may have on the culture. Because obviously, the more albums you sell, the more music you get out to the people, the more people hear your stuff, the bigger you are in terms of your impact on the culture and on fans. Like, despite all the hate that Drake's been getting over the last couple months and really his whole career, he is one of the most impactful people on hip-hop culture in the last 15 years, really ever, if you really look at the numbers. That's just undeniable. And honestly, a lot of people might see that as a major problem. They might see that as why rap's in a bad state today, and because it's, it's all Drake's fault. But you understand what I'm saying. Despite the fact that a lot of people haven't really seen Drake's recent music as high quality, it's still heavily impactful on rap culture. Most importantly, though, album sales mean a lot to artists and their careers, especially if that artist is signed to a label. Because, we can just get the elephant out of the room. The more you listen to somebody's music, the more streams a person has, the more money they're going to make. So that's obviously like clear as day. Of course, they want you to listen to their music. Of course, they want high sales, because high sales equal more money. But in terms of a label relationship, the more you sell, the more the label is going to prioritize you. And not only just provide you with more money, maybe on your next contract you get a higher and better offer, or maybe other labels are trying to get you, but in terms of putting money behind you, putting money into the machine for you, that means a lot for these artists. Putting money behind your marketing for your next project, putting money behind your music videos, putting money behind your feature list and who you can actually get, like, that means so much to these artists. So yeah, the album sales matter a lot for these guys, because at the end of the day, music is the music business is a business, right? It is art. We enjoy it. We have fun. It's artsy fartsy. It's cool or whatever. But at the end of the day, for these labels, it's a business. They don't really care. Like, if somebody on a label dropped the greatest musical project ever, it sounds so good, it's amazing, but it doesn't sell it at worth a damn, they don't care. That doesn't mean anything to them. Great, it sounds good, but nobody's listening to it, right? It's kind of like if a tree falls in the woods, does it make a sound? They don't give a damn. They don't care about how good the project is. They just care about what it sells like. They don't care if it's the most mediocre album anyone's ever heard. If it goes out there and sells 600K first week, guess what? They're going to be pretty happy. That's all they care about. So the album sales mean a lot, especially for these artists in relation to their relationships with the label, because labels will do you dirty. And if you're not selling well, they're not even looking at you. You're a speck on their shoe at that point. It's like, if a business puts a product on the shelf and that product isn't selling, guess what that business does? They take it off the shelf. They stop selling it. They stop putting money into the production of that thing. And that's exactly what happens to artists who don't sell well on these labels. Now, there will be some people who do say that higher sales equal higher quality in music. And that's just because, the general thought is that the biggest artists in the game, the most mainstream commercial stars, make the best music. And it's not ridiculous to feel that way, especially in rap, because when people talk about the greatest rappers of all time, like that unanimous group that's pretty much debated upon, they all dominated the charts at some point, right? When people bring up Pac, Biggie, Lil Wayne, Kendrick, they all were, Jay-Z, they were all chart-topping guys. So it's not ridiculous to have that sentiment. It's just more of a correlation thing than a causation thing, in my opinion. I think it just generally correlates that, the higher charting artists tend to be better, but that's not always the reason. They're not always the highest charting artists because they're better than everyone else. That's just not always the case. I look at it as like the New York study about ice creams and the murder rate. It was like in New York, when ice cream sales go up, so does the murder rate. Now, obviously, this isn't because people were being murdered over ice cream. People weren't, oh my God, I'm in line waiting so long. You took the last, scoop of chocolate chip or whatever, cookies and cream. That's not what was happening. They weren't killing people over that. It was just that When the temperature goes up, ice cream sales goes up. And when the temperature goes up, more people are outside. And because more people are outside, people end up, going at each other's necks, for lack of a better term. And that's kind of what it is with music, in my opinion. I think it's more of a correlating thing rather than a direct cause. If you drop a great album, it's going to sell well. It doesn't always work like that. It can in a lot of cases, but it doesn't always work like that. Like, look at the album Thriller, right? Thriller is agreed upon as one of the greatest pieces of music ever. It's one of the greatest albums ever created. And in most people's eyes, that's how it's viewed, right? And it's also the greatest selling album of all time. So you might look at that situation and say, because that album is so great, it is the greatest selling album of all time. And you might have a lot to, back that up in terms of evidence. But you can also, at the other hand, look at CLB, Drake's album that came out a couple years ago. CLB was one of the highest selling albums over the last couple of years, and most people weren't that fond of it. Outside of people who really enjoy Drake, it was not a well-received album. So that was a high-selling album that wasn't really received that well. So you can't necessarily say that just because of quality means that, oh my God, you're going to sell out the arenas, you're going to go crazy, you're going to be the biggest star in the world. That's not always how it works. The main problem that I have with the album sales conversation is just that it comes before the quality oftentimes. People don't really have these deep discussions about the quality. They just look at the numbers on the page and say, hey, this says 45K, so it couldn't have been that great. Oh, this says 200K, this is amazing. Oh, it says 15K, this album was trash. Like when I make fun of like Coi Leray for selling 10K, we can make fun of that, but we still have to keep it within the context of, we don't even know what that album sounds like. Clearly, most people don't know what that album sounds like because they didn't listen to it, but we don't even know what that album sounds like. So as much as we can clown her for, having low sales, we can't clown her for the album being bad necessarily because we don't know, right? Same with Tyga. We clown Tyga. I love going in the comment section and typing, Tyga, you just sold 5K, you went triple cardboard. That's hilarious. I love it. It's a great pastime. But at the end of the day, I can't really talk about the quality of his album because I don't know the quality of his album. I don't know if it's good or bad. But we can make fun of the sales all day, right? But that toxic conversation surrounding album sales and how really important fans try to make it be isn't going away anytime soon. That culture is not going away anytime soon in regards to album sales. So when you're arguing with your friend who's a Drake stan and you're trying to convince him that Lucky's better than Drake, he's never going to agree with you. The conversation is going to start and it's going to end with album sales every single time. So what I really wanted to get off my chest is that fans really shouldn't focus that much on album sales. We can talk about it, but it should never really come before the quality. All right. Again, we can make our jokes. We can all point our fingers and laugh at Ice Spice for selling 20K after doing all the stuff that she did. It's hilarious. It's a good time. I enjoy it. And we can also praise our favorite rapper for selling 150K or 180K and going up 60,000 in first week sales after their previous project. Like, we can do these things. I'm not saying we can't talk about album sales. I'm not saying they don't matter to the conversation of rap. I just think that they've kind of overstayed their welcome a little bit. The conversation surrounding first week sales has overstayed its welcome and it's expanded itself to be a lot bigger than what it probably should be. But that's going to be the end of my video. If you agree, if you disagree, let me know down below in the comment section. This was me just kind of running a little bit of a test run on my microphone as well. So let me know how this sounds. But if you made it this far, I greatly, greatly appreciate you. Have a good day. Be safe. Be blessed. I go by the name of Pay. Peace.